So let me jump on to the demo real quick here, because I think when I show the demo, I think some questions might get clarified. So I'm jumping onto my Azure portal here. So we go to the marketplace once we are in the Azure portal. And I'll demonstrate how easy it is to kind of like deploy this solution template and start protecting your traffic in few minutes. So once I go to the marketplace, I just search for Palo Alto Networks. And we have our VM-Series next generation firewall from Palo Alto here. We click on the listing here. And we can see here we have, we can deploy our VM-Series firewalls in two ways. We can select a single VM-Series firewall, or we can select the high resiliency with load balancers option as well, where it deploys two VM-Series firewalls in active-active fashion, which is connected to the load balancers like how I talked about, similar to these architectures. So what I'll be doing is, in this demo, I'll be choosing this reference architecture, which means that it has two load balancers, ingress and egress, and we have the two VM-Series firewalls deployed. And I'll show you how we can configure the networking to have these VM-Series firewalls up and running as well. So we select the high resiliency with load balancers, click on create. And we select a resource group. We select the username and password. And then coming to the licensing type, we have, like I mentioned, we have the bring your own license, which is based out of our flex credits, or we could select bundle 1 or bundle 2, which is similar to our pay-as-you-go service. So here, when I select bundle 2, again, like there might be a question on, hey, like what's the difference between bundle 1 and bundle 2? So based on your pay-as-you-go service, the number of subscriptions are different across bundle 1 and bundle 2. Like for example, in bundle 1, we only have ATP and I think Wildfire, which is kind of like pretty much very minimal protection what you need. But your bundle 2 would have pretty much all of the advanced subs what you need to kind of like start protecting your traffic. So in this case, I'll be selecting bundle 2 as my licensing type, which would have all of the advanced subs. Then we go and click on next. And now we determine, okay, what virtual network that I want to have all these resources deployed on. So we have an option to kind of like go ahead and like create a new firewall VNet. Again, like this is a centralized deployment. Then we have our management subnet for having our management traffic and then talking to Panorama or Strata Cloud Manager. We have our public subnet, which we consider for our untrust. And then we have our private subnet, which we need for our trust zones as well. And in the deployment architecture, this is the common firewall set with load balancer deployment architecture, which I've selected, like I showed in the diagram. And then we also have 3 other deployment architectures we support with respect to these solution templates. We can have a dedicated inbound firewall, or we can have dedicated outbound and east-west, and dedicated inbound, outbound, and with public load balancers and ILB. Go ahead and click on next. And we select the VM-Series version here, 11.2.5. And then in the bootstrapping parameters, the user can go ahead and provide any bootstrapping parameters, like for example, your licensing auth code, or any commands that you would like to execute once the firewall is up and running. Or you could also select no bootstrap. But part of the solution template, what we've also given the user as an option is, you can also have your firewall come up with some of the default configuration. Like for example, your routes to kind of like route your RFC 1918 routes and your internet destinations. It comes up with with those routes as well, so that the user doesn't have to perform any configuration on these firewalls once it's up and running. So I'll be selecting the default configuration in this case. Go ahead and click on next. And it would perform a final validation to kind of like check the configuration. And once the final validation is completed, we go ahead and click on create. Once we click on create, I'll show you what happens. So this is the deployment which I've run before this demo, which is the same deployment with the solution template, and I'll show you all the resources that are deployed part of the solution template. So as we can see here, we have all these resources which are deployed part of the solution template. Like I mentioned, we have our firewall VNet created. We have the two load balancers which are deployed, the egress load balancer, the ingress load balancer, and then we have our two VM-Series firewalls which are deployed. As we can see here, we have our VM1 here, and then we have our VM2 here. And all of your management subnets, your trust interface, your untrust interface would be auto-created. Your IP addressing and everything would be auto-created based on our deployment. And we would also have these VM-Series firewalls connected to the ingress and egress load balancer, your health probes, your policies, your route tables, everything would be configured for the user since we selected the default configuration. Now, what I would like to do is, once since we have this deployment already completed, I log into one of these firewalls to show what configuration it comes up with, so that the user has to do very minimal configuration to kind of like start uh, protecting the traffic. All the user has to do is, we have the egress load balancer with a front end IP. If you go and check the front end IP configuration of the egress load balancer, we have the IP address of the IP address of the load balancer. All the user has to do is they have to route their traffic, their application traffic, with the next hop IP as the front end IP. So what they have to do is they have to create a UDR to kind of like point the traffic, whatever traffic they wanted to have it inspected, and they have to point it to the front end IP of the load balancer, and the load balancer takes care of sending the traffic to the VM-Series firewalls. So what I'll do is I'll quickly jump on to one of the firewalls that have been deployed. So this is one of the firewalls that I deployed part of the solution template. So as we can see here, we have the policies auto-configured. But at the same time, we also have another policy which is configured for our load balancers, which is the health probe policy, where we allow the traffic from the health probe. And at the same
Hey,
time,
Bala, do you think you could possibly zoom in on that a little bit?
yeah, absolutely.
Cool, thanks.
One quick second here. So I'm on the policies tab. So we can see here we have these two policies which are default, but we also auto-configured the health probe policy to allow the traffic from the Azure health probe. Similarly, when we go to the network section, we have these two interfaces which are part of your trust and untrust. They come up automatically, and then we have the DHCP selected for getting the IP address, and pretty much the zones are also auto configured. Like we have trust and untrust, we have the interfaces associated to these zones, and pretty much the interface configuration also has the security zone information. They're assigned to the virtual router. And when we select the virtual router, we have two VRs which are created part of this solution template auto configuration. We have the trust VR, which is associated to our trust interface. And we click on the trust VR, we have all these static routes which are auto configured for your RFC 1918 routes. So like for example here we have, let's say for your application VNets which are coming from 10.0.0/8, then we send it to the next hop as 1.0.0.2. This is a floating IP which we assigned for the MAC address of the next hop that we wanted to send to, which is the load balancer here. With this help of these routes, pretty much all of your RFC 1918 traffic would be routed via the firewall back to its destination. And we also have the trust VR which we have the static routes already configured for how we wanted to handle the traffic for inbound coming from the internet back to the Trust VR and back to your RFC 1918 subnets. And we send it just to the Trust VR, any inbound traffic. And similarly, we also have, let me go to the policies. Let me check for any NAT policies. As we can see here, we also have a NAT policy configured from trust to untrust for your outbound traffic. How would you want to have your NAT being handled? And pretty much this is the default configuration which it comes up with to have your traffic to get started with your inspection of your traffic. So all the users have to do is when we go back to the deployment architecture, let's say, for example, if the users wants to have their outbound or east-west traffic secured or inspected by these firewalls, they just have to create a UDR, user-defined route on Azure to kind of like start pointing the traffic to the front-end IP of the load balancer. And then since we have the default configuration already part of the VM-Series firewalls, the VM-Series firewall will start inspecting the traffic and send it out to its destination. Awesome. Any questions, please? I'll take any questions here.
No, we've got no questions on the chat yet, so all good.
Awesome. And does anyone would like to know more about our Cloud Next-Gen firewall service? I can show that really quick here as well. Apart from our VM-Series firewalls, obviously, when we type in Cloud NGFW, so the first option is the Cloud Next-Gen Firewalls by Palo Alto Networks. We can click on Create and then follow almost the same step process to have your Cloud Next-Gen Firewall deployed. And the main difference with Cloud Next-Gen Firewall, like I mentioned, is the manageability and operability because it's completely managed by Palo Alto Networks. Awesome.
Yeah, we've gotten some yes for with regards to learning about the Cloud Next-Gen Firewall. And one person is asking it looks like you deployed the second Firehand separately. Is that correct?
Oh, sorry, Charles, do you mind repeating that?
Sure. The question again was, the statement is, you deployed the second firewall separately, or did you deploy both firewalls at the same time?
That's a very good question. So let me go back to this particular diagram. So part of the solution template, when we select the deployment architecture as high resiliency, both of the VM-Series firewalls would be deployed. So all the resources which you see in this diagram would be auto-deployed part of the solution template. That means the two VM-Series firewalls in high resiliency fashion, the load balancers, the networking, the default configuration, everything would come up part of the solution template. It's that easy. And since we kind of like pretty much automated the entire deployment process.
So in your example, did you do both firewalls then?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me go back to the deployment here. So once we deploy the solution template, these are all the resources which are deployed. So as we can see here, this is the firewall 1, and this is the firewall 2. So we have two firewalls deployed part of the solution template.
Cool. I hope that answers your question there. Amen, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I hope so. Cool. Yeah, go ahead then, Bala. You're good to continue. Thanks.
Awesome. I think that's all I had for today with respect to the VM-Series firewalls, Charles.
Oh, well, if you're going to go ahead and cut it early on me, then that's fine. No, that's absolutely fantastic. We'll go ahead and throw it out there quick for everyone else. If you have any other last-minute questions, please get them in at this time. We'll be wrapping up here with Bala in just a moment.
I'll just quickly take a look at the chat really quick just to kind of like see if I've missed any other questions. Or please feel free to kind of like ask any questions if you would like to know more about the VM-Series firewalls or Cloud Next-Gen firewalls or our AI runtime security. We can definitely have our future sessions focusing on the other products part of the software firewalls portfolio.
Okay. Yeah, we did just have a question come in here. What is the relationship of those two firewalls? Are they configured active-active or two independent firewalls?
Great question, Scott. So they're configured in active-active fashion. Since we have our load balancers also hooked up to these firewalls, the traffic would first land on the load balancer, which would take care of sending the traffic to either one of these firewalls. So they're active-active.
So we've got the redundancy of the load balancer and then the redundancy of the actual high availability active between the two firewalls then.
Correct. So we have the ingress and egress load balancers handling different flows, Charles. Like for example, the egress load balancer would handle only the egress traffic, and the ingress load balancer would be handling the traffic coming in from the internet, and then load balancing the traffic between these two firewalls. So it's for two different flows. So these load balancers would be handling two different flows, one for egress and one for ingress.
Fantastic. All right. If we have any other questions popping up, you guys got a few more minutes here. In the meantime, I do want to say, Bala, thank you very much for the presentation today. We'll see about having you in doing some more in the future.
Yep.
Oh, we got another question here. Will the deployment of active in Azure support IPS tunnels?
That's a good question. I need to check on that. I'm not too sure on top of my head, Charles. I believe yes, but I would want to confirm before
stating for sure. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Always make sure. No question with that. Yeah. It's always better to verify that your information is correct than just simply being wrong. I understand and respect that completely. All right, we got a question coming in from Kevin H here. For VM-Series in private cloud, when using credits for payments and licensing, how does the consumption work if you want to burst VM firewall capacity for, say, 4 days with more vCPU and RAM, and then go back down to baseline resources?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. So let's say, for example, in our private cloud, or let's say using the Flex credits, when we go ahead and like create a deployment profile, usually we select, hey, like how many vCPUs we want. Either we want flexible vCPUs or fixed vCPUs for our firewall deployment. At the same time, we also go ahead and select the different advanced subs that we want to protect our traffic. But the key here is how, like, for example, let's say we have bursts of traffic. Let's say we, as an example, let's say we select 2 VM firewalls initially part of the deployment profile. But let's say when we see the burst of traffic, we would want to have auto scaling enabled for these VM-Series firewalls, because maybe I didn't mention this, but the great thing about VM-Series firewalls is also that it auto scales, be it private cloud or be it public cloud, it supports auto scaling. So when we auto scale for this burst of traffic based on your scale in settings or scale out settings and your thresholds that they're defined, the auto scaling, when there is a new firewall which is deployed part of your auto scaling, and based on your deployment profile, it would kind of like deploy the same VM-Series firewall resource with the same advanced subs. And once the traffic kind of like comes down, your VM-Series firewall will be destroyed to kind of like support that particular traffic.
Cool. Kevin, I hope that answers the question for you.
I think I missed one question related to bundle 1. So Anik, bundle 1 has very limited advanced subs associated to it, but bundle 2 has pretty much all of the advanced subs associated to it. So I would check what advanced subs are part of bundle 1, and I would recommend to kind of like select bundle 1 or bundle 2 based on what kind of traffic you would want to be protected for your environment. But similarly, when we select BYOL, which is again like based out of Flex credits, you can select what advanced subs that you want part of your deployment profile, and like have that deployment profile or that auth code associated associated to your firewall deployment.
Cool. All right. It looks like we're all set with the questions then. Yeah, we got some thank yous coming in there. Bala, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate everything you've been sharing with us. This has been fantastic material. I'll let you go ahead and get going now. Oh, Kevin does have one last question of any resources for auto scaling on ESXi?
Yes, we do support auto scaling on ESXi. Let me see if I can. Charles, is it okay if I send you the documentation for that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but we do support auto scaling on ESXi, and we also support. The good thing is actually we also support the orchestrated deployment from Panorama, and we could also select how you would want to auto scale with related to metrics from Panorama. So if you have Panorama, there is a Panorama plugin or the orchestration plugin. We could have that plugin enabled, and then we could have the deployment orchestrator from Panorama, as well as like selecting the auto scaling metrics.
Okay. The link that I shared earlier in our chat, Kevin, where I'm talking about a post-event discussion area where we can talk about the event after I get the videos uploaded, whatever links and information that Bala sends over to me, I'll be sure to include that in the post. So you'll be able to get that information right off of Live Community for you all in one place. And if anyone else wants that too, I'll go ahead and throw the link one more time right in the chat so it's easily accessible for everybody. This link is currently pointing to our registration for today's event. Once I get our actual post event created, this link will forward directly over to that, so everyone can still use this link to go directly to it, or you can just look for it in Live Community as well too. Either way works. So with that then, Bala, I will go ahead and let you get going. Thank you very much for everything, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Charles. Really appreciate the opportunity. And for any latest updates, please visit our live community page. And we always keep updating our live community page with latest information and latest demos, etc. So would love to kind of like connect over there. Thank you so much, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. Or Bala, sorry.